Imagine this. Van rates are down, seemingly a win for your bottom line. Yet, week after week, your total freight costs continue to climb. How is this possible? The answer lies in a hidden mechanism that's quietly siphoning profits from your shipping budget. The fuel surcharge trap. For most businesses that move goods, freight costs represent a significant portion of their operational expenses. When market conditions shift and base van rates decrease, the expectation is that your overall shipping expenditures should follow suit. After all, a lower rate per mile should translate directly into savings. But what if it doesn't? What if, despite these favorable market fluctuations, you find yourself paying more for the same movement than you did months ago? The culprit, more often than not, is the fuel surcharge. Now, the fuel surcharge itself isn't inherently problematic. It's a necessary component of freight pricing, designed to help carriers offset the volatile and often unpredictable cost of diesel. Unlike the base rate, which covers the driver's pay, equipment, and general operating expenses, the fuel surcharge is specifically tied to the price of fuel. It ensures that as diesel prices fluctuate, carriers aren't left absorbing massive losses or gaining undue profits from fuel alone. It's meant to be a fair adjustment, reflecting the real-time cost of powering those trucks. Here's where the trap begins. The fuel surcharge isn't just a flat percentage or a simple calculation based on today's diesel price. It's almost always tied to something called a baseline diesel price. This baseline is a pre-agreed upon price point for diesel fuel. It's the reference marker. The surcharge only kicks in or adjusts when the actual average diesel price moves above or, in some cases, below this established baseline. For example, if your baseline is set at $3.00 per gallon and diesel jumps to $4.00, the surcharge mechanism calculates the difference and applies an additional charge to cover that dollar increase. Conversely, if diesel falls below $3.00, the surcharge might disappear or even become a credit, depending on the agreement. The critical issue, the subtle yet powerful trap, arises when this baseline diesel price becomes outdated. Think about it. Many shipping agreements, especially long-term contracts, might have been established months or even years ago. At that time, the baseline diesel price was set based on the prevailing market conditions. Let's say 6 months ago, when you negotiated your contract, diesel was consistently hovering around $4.50 per gallon. Your carrier agreed to a baseline of, say, $4.00. This meant that for every gallon above $4.00, a surcharge would apply. This seemed fair at the time. Fast forward to today. Market dynamics have shifted dramatically. Economic indicators might be softening, and as a result, the demand for freight has decreased. This decline in demand often translates to lower base van rates. Let's imagine those base rates have fallen by a significant 1% this week. This should be good news, right? You're paying less per mile for the actual transportation service. However, simultaneously, the global oil market has tightened, or perhaps refinery output has dipped, causing diesel prices to surge. This week, let's say diesel prices have climbed by 3 to 5%. Now, here's the insidious part. Your fuel surcharge is still being calculated against that 6-month-old baseline of $4.00. Even though your base van rate is down, the actual average diesel price might now be significantly higher than that $4.00 baseline. And critically, it might even be higher than the actual diesel price when you signed the contract 6 months ago. So, what happens? Your carrier is still charging you a surcharge that reflects the current high diesel price relative to that low, outdated baseline. The savings you gained from the 1% drop in base van rates are being completely eroded, and very likely surpassed by the disproportionately high fuel surcharge being levied because the baseline is no longer representative of current market realities. You're effectively paying a premium on fuel that is no longer justified by the initial agreement's spirit. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a common oversight that can have a profound impact on a shipper's profitability. Every penny added to freight costs directly impacts your margins. If you're operating on thin margins, which many businesses are, an uncontrolled fuel surcharge can quickly turn a profitable quarter into a challenging one. It can make your products less competitive, force you to absorb costs, or even compel you to pass those costs on to your customers, potentially impacting sales volume. So, how do you identify if you're caught in this trap? The first, and most crucial step, is to actively review your fuel surcharge tables and agreements. Don't just glance at the total freight bill. Dig into the details. What is your agreed-upon baseline diesel price? Compare this baseline to historical and current average diesel prices. Resources like the Department of Energy's weekly diesel fuel updates are invaluable here. If your baseline is significantly lower than the current average diesel price, and especially if it's lagging far behind what current market conditions would dictate for a fair baseline, you've likely found the problem. The next step is to engage in a proactive conversation with your carriers. This isn't about accusing them of wrongdoing. It's about ensuring fairness and transparency in your partnership. Negotiate to update your fuel surcharge baseline. Propose a new baseline that more accurately reflects current diesel prices or a rolling average that adjusts more frequently. Some agreements even include mechanisms for periodic baseline adjustments. But these often go unutilized unless the shipper actively pushes for them. Be prepared to present your data. Show them the current market rates for diesel versus your outdated baseline. Explain how this disparity is impacting your total freight costs. Emphasize that you understand the need for a fair fuel surcharge for their operations, but that the current setup is disproportionately burdening your business. Consider proposing a shorter review cycle for the fuel surcharge baseline, perhaps quarterly or even monthly, to prevent such significant discrepancies from reoccurring. In conclusion, in the complex world of logistics, it's easy to overlook the finer print, especially when it comes to something as seemingly straightforward as a fuel surcharge. But as we've seen, an outdated fuel surcharge baseline can be a silent, persistent drain on your profits, completely nullifying any savings you might gain from falling base rates. Don't let this hidden cost erode your hard-earned margins. Take a minute, check your fuel surcharge baseline, and reclaim control over your freight expenditures. Your bottom line will thank you.